So today's theme is game design and digital learning, a subject that I'm very deeply passionate about and why I'm here today. In fact, it is my company, Game Fruit's passion for making games and Rachel's passion for making learning more awesome that brought us together. And together, we want to ensure that the voice of the video games industry is heard and included as part of a wider conversation about games for learning. So before I introduce our first speaker, I want to read a passage from Yasmin's book, Connected Gaming. Nothing sums up why making games like this does. So just bear with me while I find it and then I'll kick off. So, games are a communicative medium. To make a game is not only to decompose a system, understand its structure and parts, but then also reassemble a model of that system using algorithms. Code. Did you hear that, Ministry of Education people? It also means to express an idea intentionally for others, to create for them a first-person experience that one believes is worth having. It is to share a viewpoint from the inside. So I got goosebumps reading that the first time, and I could go on reading inspirational quotes from that book all day, but Yasmin can do that in a bit. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Tara Fagan. Tara is Te Papa's very own our first speaker, Tara, is from Te Papa's very own Hinatore Learning Lab, where learning, innovation, and culture collide. Where many a savvy kid goes after school to learn to code through making games. Tara is passionate about learning and ensuring all learners have access and equality in learning experience. Tara was the lead connected educator in 2015 and 2016, connecting educators around New Zealand together for professional learning. And probably the most important thing of all to know about Tara was that her first computing experience was the same as mine, the Commodore 64. So without further ado, let's welcome Tara onto the stage. Tara.
Kia ora tātou, and I have to say, go the Commodore 64. I think it's been responsible for a lot of us getting into the jobs that we have today. Ko Castlebrook tuku waka, ko Aoraki tuku manga, ko Rakaia tuku awa, ko Te Whānau o Aotearoa tuku iwi, no Rakaia o. Ko Tara Fagan taku ingoa, ko Te Papa Tongarewa tuku mahi. Kia ora, I'm Tara Fagan. I'm Senior Advisor Museum Education here at Te Papa, and I'm really proud and honoured to be able to stand on the stage to represent our team of 16. We've got 16 in our Learning Innovation team, and this is their story as much as it's mine, talking about the work that we've accomplished both before I arrived and since. They're an amazing bunch of people, and we'll get to hear some of their work as we talk today. But before I start our presentation, I'd like to acknowledge NZCER, particularly Graham, Api and Rachel for bringing this conference together. Yesterday was an absolute amazing day, and I know today will be too, and really looking forward to the speakers that we've got. We're proud to be an innovation partner and sponsor this conference along with NZCER, but want to acknowledge their work in bringing this all together. So kia ora. Okay. So Te Papa is going through a time of change. We're 20 years young next year. We're becoming a site of innovation. We always have been, but we're looking at new ways of learning and new ways of engaging. We've got our mahuki. We've had Te Papa talks. And as you'll see from the construction zones around the building, we're also going through a period of updating and renewing our exhibitions. And we wanted to look at what was happening for learning. So we came up with Hinatore, our learning lab, which we're very proud of. Traditionally, our museum education had happened out in the museum and also in this rather dated classroom, which you can see. It looks like the old style classrooms. It doesn't look very inviting, and there's not a lot of spaces for learners to be able to create and make it their own. So we wanted to make it modern. So we came to create our learning lab. It's a modern learning environment that enables learner-centred, connected and experiential learning for everyone who enters it. It's designed for visitors of all ages. As I talk today, I'm not talking specifically about game design, but I think you'll hear aspects of it woven through the talk. You'll see things about gameful practice such as meaningful play, feedback loops, which are so important to the work that we're doing. Cycles as expertise, so that there's that practicing of skills, there's that failing, there's that thinking and reflecting and trying again. And there's that goal setting that happens in this environment too. At Te Papa, our vision's changing hearts, changing minds and changing lives, and that's something that's very much a personal value as well as for the value for the company I work for. And we wanted to ensure that learning was part of that. Yesterday, Amy referred that learning is where life happens. And so we're trying to look at how we can weave learning through all that we do here at Te Papa to make the most of the experience for everyone who arrives here, particularly our school learners. Our team of 16 deliver a range of programs. We deliver public programs, informal learning, and we deliver more formal programs from early childhood to tertiary and beyond. So we're looking at ways that we can just change that, make it more tailored to the classroom, to the teachers that are coming in to see us, and more relevant for the learners. We really want to be able to empower lifelong learning. So we came up with some 21st century skills. Those of you that will be teachers, these won't be foreign concepts to you, particularly communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. We know how important they are. But we added curiosity because for us that's where it all begins, and obviously cultural engagement. We want people to be able to engage with our museum and our exhibitions and our objects in new ways and make it relevant to the learning that's happening for them. Our name, Hinatore, is Māori for phosphorence or luminescence. We like to think of it as a glow or a glimmering in the dark, the sparking of ideas that happen when people learn, the neurons coming together in the brain. Our connective digital technologies and engagement is one of the ways in which we do that. In creating Hinatore, we wanted to bring together sometime opposing audience and opposing ideas and experiences to really mix up what museum education means. So you can see things like we have fun but meaningful, high-tech and low-tech in our lab, expert and novice, all coming together to create new learning experiences. We were very considerate about the design. So if you think back to that old classroom and to the environment that you're seeing now, it's changed a lot. We want to replicate the thinking around innovative learning environments because we know what they mean to cement good learning. So we wanted to create a space where learners could come in, they could make it their own, and they could learn in new ways. Our spatial design represents our approach to learning. It's learner-centred and modular, so that they can create and design their own learning space because most of the furniture is movable. It enables concurrent learning activities so that the space can be divided up. So for those of you that might have been in any workshops up in Hinatore yesterday, you would have seen a very different looking space to one that I'm showing you today. When it's full with children, you can see just how we can separate it off by moving the TV around or creating little barriers in the room so that there's groups learning on different things at the same time. There's a flow to the space so that you can easily move from one activity to the next. It's comfortable, welcoming and fun and inviting to a range of audiences and ages and types. As I said earlier, it's flexible, everything moves, and it's designed so that anyone can do anything within the lab. It's designed so that the learners can be at the heart of that and can access what they need to access to support their learning. We enable a range of experiences from lo-fi to hi-fi, and we provide very interesting and relevant choices for students. For teachers, when they book in a group to come into Hinatore or even to the museum education programs, we talk to the teachers about what they're learning, what's relevant to their curriculum, and how can we help support that learning. So we tailor the programs to the needs of the class and to the needs of the curriculum so that when each group comes in, they're getting something that's relevant and can be transported back into the classroom. One of the most important things that happened when we were designing the space was to ensure that we had an opening to the museum. We didn't want to be distracted or not part of it. Before we did the renovation. There was solid doors there. You couldn't see what was happening. In fact, you didn't even think there was a classroom behind the doors. So we've opened up the glass doors so people can come in and see what's happening in that space. And at the moment, the doors are closed when we've got school groups in, but we actually hope to have those doors open so that members can come in at any time and observe the learning that's happening and also participate in it themselves. One of our base philosophies is around experimental and experiential learning. We're trying new things out. We're a learning lab. We're learning and trying things out as much as the students and groups that are coming in to see us. We're also very much about experiential learning, that hands-on learning that happens. I'm an early childhood teacher, although I've worked in primary and secondary for the last few years. But that early childhood philosophy of learning by doing and experiential is so important to my philosophy about what makes good learning. And it's exciting to see how any learner that comes into the lab delights in that hands-on, trying and testing things out and giving things a real go. We also have a model about failing forwards, both for our learners and for our team of educators. We reflect regularly, looking at what's working and iterating as we go. It's those cycles of expertise that I talked about earlier, about practicing new skills, failing, thinking again, and renewing, trying different things out. We work iteratively. Programs are being evaluated and evolved on the fly. We do it after every session that happens in the Learning Lab, but we often do it as the sessions are happening, changing what's not working as we'd planned and evolving it so that the learners get the best experiences that they can. It's about informal feedback as well as formal, and we're researching all our programs as we go through to determine whether we are making a difference that we want to make for our learners. We're about interdisciplinary and STEAM. We put the A in rather than STEM because we want to emphasise the arts. And I'm a big believer that if we don't have the arts, we lose some of the creativity that our children do, and it has a real impact on their learning. So we're about STEM, and we're about working across subjects and looking at how we can link them together. And I heard through a couple of conversations yesterday just how that's happening in the classroom for teachers now, how subjects are meshing together to make the most of the learning. We're about reciprocal learning. That notion of ako, where everyone's a teacher and a learner, and tuakaina taina, where the more experienced is leading and guiding the work of the less experienced. Everyone's a teacher and everyone's a learner in Hinatore. We're about collaborative learning. I mean, we all know we learn best when we work with others. So we run concurrent activities, but we're also encouraging the learners to support and teach each other as they go through, working through problems, through issues that they have, but also teaching one another. We know we're not always the experts, and we create opportunities for group learning, which, as I said, we know is so important. And often some of the richest learning has come for the teachers who have been in with their students when the students are teaching, the students are the teachers for their teachers. And some of our groups have taken back ideas and shared it with staff back in their school about how you use some of the technology that we have in the Learning Lab. We're also about open source. We have some fabulous equipment in Hinatore. We're very lucky to have some of that. Technology is something I'm very passionate about, especially when it enables learning. And we've got some really great technology. But that's not helpful for classes in the long term. They can come in and use it, but we also want them to be able to create the experiences back in their own environment. And so where we can, we use open source software, we use free software, so that while they may not have the HoloLens back in their classroom, there's ways they can replicate the experience through Google Cardboard and a phone, or through some of the 3D sculpting software. So it's transportable in its ideas back to the school or to the early childhood centre. We use, as I said, technology there. You can see the vibe going, and this young person's creating an artwork. And it's often highly creative, and we're using game-based learning, which can often appeal to a range of learners, but particularly to the disengaged learners, because they're hopping into something, and that fear of learning is sometimes removed as they hop and experiment with the technology. It doesn't stop here. Often this will be used to promote writing or maths lesson. Recently we had a group of learners in from Korokoro School who were in the lab and they were using virtual reality to help support their understanding of fractions. So they did some work in the museum looking at fractions, but also came into the learning lab and looked at how they could use the virtual reality to help support their learning in that space. It's really transforming how we work and think about our collections. We are a museum, so obviously everything we do is linking to the exhibitions and the collections that are there in the museum and looking at how we can make the most to enrich the learning. Also about hands-on learning. So yes, we've got some tech, but we also have the hands-on space where creations, where art can happen with traditional materials and collage, etc., to help support the learners. The learners have the choice in what they want to be able to participate in. We're also about learning networks, looking at ways we can connect people together. So these are 2 school groups, one in New Zealand and one in Australia, talking together, sharing experiences about a task that they've undertaken. We're also hoping to create learning networks for our teachers as well, how they can come together and share experiences and new ways of learning and sharing what they've created. We have a wonderful team of specialist facilitators. We have 3 learning innovation specialists that work in their lab. They're most teachers, and we also have a wonderful team of museum education and public programmers, all who work in this space, most who have an education background, so everything we do is pinned to the curriculum, from early childhood through to secondary. It's really important that what we do is helping the classroom learning. When we started out with Hinatore, we had a school think tank to advise us what you'd like to see. What would you like to happen in this space? And that helped form our programs as we went. We're currently setting up an advisory group at the moment to help form and guide us as we continue. So this is a call for you. If any of you are interested in being on our advisory group, come and see me during the day or send me an email. My details will be up at the end, and let me know. We're really keen to have a great group of teachers advising us on what you'd like to see, what programs you would like. We're also keen to have learners on our advisory group too. So if you're interested in coming and helping us form our space, let me know. So a little bit more about Hinatore. So this is about our programming approach. As I've said throughout, learning is really, really important to what we're doing. We are learner-centred, and wherever possible, it's about co-creation. Gone are the days of the stand and deliver, but it's about learners coming in and experiencing for themselves. We are very iterative. We develop cycles, we're testing, we're sending feedback all the time throughout our sessions. We also use the Lean Canvas model. We've adapted it from business so that we can develop programs very quickly on the fly, link them to curriculum, test them out to see if they work. And we found that a really useful tool for guiding us as we go through. I'm going to show you an example of one of our programs, just a short video of how we use some of the technology in understanding about Pacific explorers and the sailing and creation and design of the Waka. So that's an example of one of our 2-hour programs where students will come in and study an aspect of that. It might be studying the Waka that's out in the museum, then coming into the Learning Lab and designing a 3D Waka that they can do using open source software, which they can then take back to the classroom to complement their learning. There's also the printing that we do, and we're working on touch tables at the moment to get some specialist programs that link directly to the museum on the touch table. And again, what we develop for those bigger touch tables can be replicated on devices back in the school, so we can send that program home and it can be used on touch devices such as iPads and Surfaces. Another example of how we engage with the museum in terms of enriching the learners is about creating through art. So this is an example of a young girl who had also been on the Pacific Waka program. She had been out in the museum and had spent a long time looking at the Waka, taking a few photos, and then came in and used a touch table to recreate her Waka. And she spent well over an hour at this activity drawing. Sometimes her kaiako would come up and give advice on the art that she was creating, making suggestions to the way she could change her artwork. Other kaiako came up and suggested features that helped the waka sail. So she was getting a really enriched learning experience. For her, and I'm not saying that technology replaces any of the other materials, because it certainly doesn't. It's just an addition that we can use. But for this young learner, it was about the element of provisionality when she was working out her design for her waka. So she could press the undo button. If her design didn't turn out as she would have liked, she could click the undo button and restore it to the previous version. Sometimes that's not what we're prepared to do if we spend a long time working on a piece of art. So for her, that helped her with her experience. And then she used that waka to go on and do some descriptive writing. This is an example of another waka that was created in Tilt Brush. So again, using the virtual reality to go in and paint. So you can go in and paint, but then you've got the opportunity to view it in 3D afterwards. So this is something that the students can take back once they've designed it in the Learning Lab, and they can take it back to their classroom and use that to prompt their further learning. The ability to be able to have that 360-degree view, and once you're actually in there, you can look above and below as well, gives you an idea for detail and lets you see it from new perspectives as well. We were very fortunate to work with the Ministry of Education on a pilot program where we had 2 kura into Papa. Each kura came for 2 days each. We spent a day planning with the kaiako from each kura before they came in, working in the museum, working out how coming here for 2 days could really help support the learning that was happening. We engaged Core Education as consultants to help us deliver the program, but we're also very fortunate in that we've got fluent reo speakers in the museum that are also kura teachers, so they have that strong understanding of the Marotanga as well. So we worked with the ministry and designed a program, and each of the kura came in, and we were really excited to be able to be involved in this. And just as I'm explaining a little bit about this, you'll see an example of the Whakapumo kura who came up from Christchurch and spent 2 days with us. So it was a lot about engagement within the museum. It was a lot about time in the Learning Lab, and you'll see it's not just a tech focus. As you look through this video, you'll see lots of examples of the students writing, of talking, of collaborating and developing projects as they go through. So for these students, and this particular group here, they were enhancing their descriptive writing, and they were doing it through the Ngaitahu Rakai Hotu, who travelled around the South Island as he landed, forming bases. And they were telling their story through that way. They were learning about that particular Rakai Hotu, but they were also using it to inform their descriptive writing. And part of their time with us was that they had to use the knowledge that they were getting to design a taonga that they could sell in a mall. And so they did that. Part of our experience was that they understood about caring for a taonga and what that meant. So our curator, we had a specialist come up and talk about what it means to work in the museum and to look after objects. We gave the students some curatorial gloves, the little blue gloves that we use when we're handling collections. And the students took great delight in wearing these gloves and understanding what that meant. And so when they created their own prototypes, some did it digitally, others did it, they crafted it out of collage. The students would go and put on their blue gloves and take them as they carried them around. So they were starting to learn a little bit about how we protect our treasures, but also using that in their descriptive writing as they started to create adverts for the products that they were selling. And that linked back to the classroom. And we're delighted, we recently got the report evaluation, so we had research done on this from Core Education, and it came back and it showed it really made a difference for these learners, that they could see that their writing skills had grown, particularly through descriptive writing. Not only was their writing improved, but the reo around digital technology language, both for the kaiako and for the students as well. Just before I play this next video, this is an example from another group that came to Whānau o Te Kakano from Titahi Bay, came out and they were studying leadership skills through the atua, and this is just one group talking about or performing their movie that they created using green screen about Ruamoko. This was completely their idea. They chose the image, they created the song that you're about to hear, but they also recognised that it needed some music to go with it, so they quickly pulled out an iPad, used GarageBand to create the background music to it as well. So through this, they learnt more about the atua, but particularly about those emotional literacy skills that this particular group were looking at. We're a museum, we've got a lot of collections. So a recent program, we had a 2-hour program for Year 2 and 3 students from Clyde Key School came up, and it was on wearable arts. So we had a conservator and one of our educators plan the program. We had 3 wearable arts items come up into Hinatore. We had a conservator talk about the finer elements of the design, what it means when you design, the things that you look for, how we keep our collections safe to the group of students. They then use this to go off and create models out of plasticine with a variety of tools, and they use stop motion animation to be able to replicate that design. That all added to their program of learning which they were studying in their school, which was about design and wearable arts. We're also thinking of new ways to take Hinatore out into the museum, or the learning philosophy that we're thinking about. So this was something we tried last week, brand new, and we're still experimenting with how it goes. But we had a group of students, and secondary students from Freiburg High and Palmerston North, who came into the museum to look at our Gallipoli exhibition. And they had an educator guide them through that, talking about different aspects of that, particularly looking at the objections that might have happened in the war. So we took our equipment down to the space outside Gallipoli and asked the students when they came out to replicate their emotions. What did they see? How were they feeling when they walked through that exhibition? And I think probably many of you, as you've walked, if you've seen it and walked through it yourself, you know that you come out sort of very sombre and thinking about what things were. So we were getting the students to replicate their emotions. We then used our 3D scanners, and the students walked around and scanned. So once they'd gotten to their groups and planned what their emotions were going to be and how they were going to demonstrate them, they used the 3D sensors, scanners, to walk around, scan them, and you can just see on the side of the slide some of their images that they've got. So when you view them in virtual reality, you can walk 360, you can look down, you can look up. And because this was about the scale of our war, you could scale these. So we had the HoloLens out there too, so you could take the replication that the students had done and make it just as big as happens within the exhibition as well. So it's giving students a new way to be able to experience and engage within the museum. We're also working out, if you've seen the Interface magazine, probably no one's had a chance to read it just yet. We've been too busy engaging in conversation. But there's an article in there about a collaboration we had with Te Puke High School recently, where 2 groups of students, one group from Wellington High School came into our learning lab, and Te Puke High School, who have the same setup as we have in the lab, and they came together to work on a remote challenge using Sculpt VR. They were being challenged to work collaboratively in the space and remotely to solve a problem. The task was that they had to hollow out a cube so that a ball could be dropped in. So there were people working in the background on how that could happen, and people working in the virtual reality. So we had 2 teams working collaboratively. And we think about the skill set that our students are going to need for the future and how we are going to continue to work more remotely. We're setting up the skill set for them to be able to practice this now. We've got a few refinements to do with our program, but we're really excited about how it's going and the potential to be able to work with students from around the world in challenges like this. We're also doing some professional learning for teachers. We're going to be running a summer series of PD towards the end of January to support teachers in their learning about how we can use these technologies in our learning environments, and different ways of learning and engaging and setting up our networks to be able to support that. And just as I begin to finish, we're also aware that not everybody can make it to Wellington to experience Te Papa, so we're running virtual excursions where we take Te Papa out to New Zealand and around the world. So we have an educator who has, you can see there, Scott, with a camera on a gimbal and giving an education program to groups who are not able to get to Wellington. So we've had as far north as Kawakawa, right up north to Dunedin, just out of Dunedin in the South Island. And they're proving really popular, so that we work again with the teachers to work out what aspects they'd like to know, and then we're given a 1-hour guided program. As I said, these are becoming popular, and not only are we getting requests from New Zealand now, we've got our first international one happening very shortly as well. It's allowing us to go beyond the walls of the museum and to reach out to classes that we don't normally have access to. So as I've talked today, while I haven't talked specifically about gameful practice or game design, you hopefully have seen a lot of elements about that woven in between, that we're really centred on the learner. Those feedback loops are so essential to what we're doing, that we're testing and trialling all the time, and that it's really important that there's goals in the learning that we have. Where are we going next? You tell us. We'd love your ideas. We're listening and really keen to see where we happen. We've got what you'd like to see happen. We've got a couple of exciting projects that are going to be launched next year. One of them is a Minecraft program. We're working with EQC to design a special program in Minecraft around Fix, Fasten and Don't Forget, and that's something we'll be offering from February next year, along with a couple of special virtual reality programs as well. So keep tuned, and love to hear from you and get your ideas. I've got some contact details up on the screen. Apologies for the blue, it is very hard to read, but just feel free to get in touch. We are listening, we'd love to connect, love to find out how we can help you. And do follow us on Twitter. We've got a brand new Twitter account, just launched this week, @tapapa_learning. Great way to connect with us along with our email. So kia ora, thanks very much, and look forward to having conversations with you.